Welcome back to Network Evolution. In this series, I take a look at individual battle chips that have had multiple appearances in the Battlechips games and see if and how the chip was changed over time. As a requirement, each chip that I go over must have more than one appearance in the series, whether or not the chips are changed at all between its different iterations. Today, we're going to be looking at a fan favorite chip that exists in the later half of the Battlechips series. In fact, I would argue that the chip we're looking at today is actually the single most popular chip in Battlechips 4 specifically, that being the Air Hockey series of chips. So how exactly does Air Hockey change throughout its appearances? Let's find out by diving directly into its introductory game. Air Hockey first appears in Battlechips 4 alongside the Dharma virus that drops the chip as a battle reward. Dharma viruses are first found in the park area, giving you guaranteed access to the chips immediately before the second tournament of the game. Of course, since Air Hockey is dropped by a virus in Battlechips 4, it comes in 3 different versions. When you use the Air Hockey chip, Mega Man throws a hockey puck out onto the panel in front of him, which then travels down diagonally into the next column if possible. Air Hockey will always travel diagonally, and its path is determined by where Mega Man is standing when he uses the chip. Ideally, you want to be standing in your own front column when using the chip, as the puck only travels over a specific number of panels before disappearing, which includes your own panels. Unfortunately, Air Hockey requires panels to work, which means that it is stopped by broken and missing panels, and sadly, this means that the chip is completely useless against the duo fight at the end of each Battlechips 4 run. Air Hockey 1 is, of course, the weakest chip in the series. It deals 50 damage per hit and travels over 7 panels. Air Hockey 2 is increased to 60 damage per hit and travels over 11 panels. And lastly, Air Hockey 3 deals 70 damage per hit and travels over an impressive 15 panels. All 3 of these chips are breaker type chips, which means that they can damage enemies that have defenses such as the Boomer, Gaia, and Meteor viruses. Air Hockey also doesn't cause flashing, which lets the chip hit enemy navies multiple times so long as the puck travels over the panel that they are on multiple times. As for its chip codes, Air Hockey 1 comes in the D, E, F, and star codes. Of these codes, E is the most notable one, as the secondary folder that is obtained in a game has access to Area Grab E inside of it. This is important, as stealing your opponent's area actually lets you get more hits onto enemies, since the puck would be bouncing back and forth between the 2 columns that are left after you use an Area Grab. However, you can only use one Area Grab before using Air Hockey, as the puck will disappear immediately if it has no second column to travel to. Air Hockey 2 comes into I, J, and K codes. Honestly, I've never used any of these myself, though it is important to point out that Metagel does come into K code as well, giving some synergy with Air Hockey 2. And lastly, Air Hockey 3 comes into U, V, and W codes. Of these 3, V is definitely the best one, as it's obtained from Higsby's Lotto Trader and can be thrown in a strong V code folder in Battlechips 4. Air Hockey is an incredible chip overall in Battlechips 4, especially Air Hockey 3, partially due to its ability to hit multiple times and lack of flashing when it's used. However, there are 2 other mechanics in Battlechips 4 that make Air Hockey among the strongest chips in the game. First and most obvious, there's Metal Soul. Since Air Hockey is a breaker type chip in all of its appearances throughout the series, it can be used as your sacrifice to activate Metal Soul. And once Metal Soul is active, you can charge your other Air Hockey chips to make them deal double damage. But despite Metal Soul being able to double their damage, I wouldn't actually recommend doing this. One of the benefits of Air Hockey is the ability to chain them back to back, trapping opponents in a loop where every Air Hockey used will cause them to flinch and get hit by the next one used in the chain. However, it is important to point out that the Air Hockey chips have a long lag time after being used. When the chip is active, Mega Man can't actually use any other chips or move to other panels. This also means that you can't charge your next Air Hockey with Metal Soul while there's one already active on the field. As such, Metal Soul can increase the damage of the Air Hockey chips, but doing so makes it impossible to chain these chips back to back. However, there is one other mechanic in Battlechips 4 that can allow you to ignore Metal Soul altogether: Mega Man's emotion value. This is a hidden mechanic that determines whether Mega Man is in his normal, worried, or full synchro state. Your emotion value changes when you take damage, heal with recover chips, or when you land hits with your chips against an enemy. Most of the time, full synchro is obtained when you counter hit an enemy, which brings your emotion value to 255 and grants full synchro. But in Battlefield 4 only, you can also get to an emotion value of 255 by hitting enemies with multi-hitting chips, such as air hockey. This means that you can get full synchro without landing a counter hit just by hitting an enemy multiple times with your hockey puck. Ultimately, this is why Air Hockey 3 is considered to be one of, if not the best chip in Battlefield 4. By using a single copy of Air Hockey 3, you can get full synchro for your next copy of the chip. That second Air Hockey, which now has its damage doubled from full synchro, then hits enough times to give you full synchro again for a third Air Hockey, and so on. This can actually be an effective way of S-ranking the majority of navies in the game in under 10 seconds with just some copies of Air Hockey 3. And lastly, as indicated by its chip codes, the Air Hockey chips can also be ordered to create a program advance, Pit Hockey. Pit Hockey also comes in 3 levels just like the chips that it created. Pit Hockey 1 deals 100 damage per hit, Pit Hockey 2 deals 150 damage per hit, and Pit Hockey 3 deals 200 damage per hit, with all 3 versions of the PA traveling over 18 panels. I'll be honest though, I don't really use this program advance myself, mostly due to the way that the emotion value lets you get full synchro from getting multiple hits using just the base chip. Overall, I'd say that Air Hockey was an incredible inclusion to Battlefield 4. As I've said, it's easy to think that it's one of the best chips, and I personally believe that Air Hockey 3 itself is the absolute best chip in the game. With its high damage thanks to being a non-flashing multi-hit chip, and giving you full synchro just by using it properly, Air Hockey 3 is among the strongest chips in the game by far. Unfortunately, due to how ridiculously strong Air Hockey was in Battlefield 4, there were only 2 possible outcomes for it in the next game. It was either going to get nerfed, or it was going to be removed completely. Luckily for us, Capcom decided to go with the nerf route, though the nerfs to Air Hockey weren't actually all that bad. First off, the Dharma virus was removed from the game, which means that Air Hockey went from having 3 different levels to just being a single chip. Since it can't be obtained from viruses anymore, Air Hockey became a chip that is obtained from mystery data instead, including battle mystery datas in the Orin area. This makes it somewhat annoying to collect, but certainly not impossible to do so, especially if you get a little bit lucky in the Orin area. The damage on the chip is the most important thing that got nerfed, bringing it down to just 40 damage per hit, even lower than the 50 damage that Air Hockey 1 did back in Battlefield 4. This may have been a bit too much of a nerf, especially since the puck that gets thrown out only travels over 11 panels in this game, the same as Air Hockey 2 in the previous game. However, the other changes in Battlefield 5 that affect Air Hockey kind of make up for this nerf. First off, there's the chip codes that Air Hockey comes in this time around. In Battlefield 5, Air Hockey is available in the Q, R, and S codes, and while the first 2 codes are somewhat decent, the S code is where Air Hockey truly shines. Once again, this gives Air Hockey a shared code with the Area Grab chip, letting you take some of your opponent's area to get more hits off with the Air Hockey. In addition to this, there's also a second breaker element chip that comes in the S code and also has synergy with Area Grab, that being Drill Arm 2. And of course, this additional breaker type chip means that you can build a folder around this game's breaker type double soul, Night Soul. Ironically, Night Soul and Metal Soul are extremely similar to one another, with both souls letting you charge breaker element chips for double damage. This won't help Air Hockey be as strong as it was in Battlefield 4, but is still a good way of increasing its damage. In addition, Night Soul makes Mega Man invulnerable while he's using chips in his front column, which of course is where you want to be when using Air Hockey. So Night Soul is a great tool for this chip, but admittedly, it's more of a second fiddle to that previously mentioned Drill Arm 2 chip, which is easier to land hits with in my opinion, and will generally do more damage than Air Hockey does. And lastly, seeing as Air Hockey comes into Q, R, and S codes, the Pit Hockey Program Advance is back once again. However, just like the previous game, I don't personally use it. I don't really think you should be throwing in 3 copies of Air Hockey in different codes, especially when one of those codes is the S code, which is honestly the best one in the game. You're much better off using 4 copies of Air Hockey S for a Night Soul folder than you are using the Program Advance. So overall, Air Hockey is definitely weaker than it was before this game, but it's still a pretty fun tool to use in a specific but very strong folder. And shout out to my loyal Twitch viewer Spice, who is obsessed with Night Soul and that S code folder. This brings us to the series finale, where air hockey once again makes a glorious return. This time around, the chip had its damage buffed up to 70 damage per hit, the same value that Air Hockey 3 had back in Battlefield 4. It also travels over 11 panels once again in this game. As for its chip codes, Air Hockey comes in the L, M, and N codes in Battlefield 6, which means that for the first time it does not share a code with Area Grab. Of course, that doesn't matter so much since Battlefield 6 gives you access to one guaranteed copy of Area Grab in the star code, unlike the previous two games. Now, this may all sound great, but unfortunately, I can't say that Air Hockey has really improved much since its previous appearance. The codes it comes in again are all pretty good, especially the L code, but other than that, there's not really much going on in favor of Air Hockey, and this is mostly due to a lack of damage modifiers in this game's cross system. In Battlefield 6, there are two breaker element crosses, both appearing in Falser version. These are Dust and Ground Cross. Now, Dust Cross is, in my opinion, one of the best crosses in either version of the game due to its Dust Shoot ability, but this ability doesn't really directly affect any particular chip. And then there's Ground Cross, which is where things get a bit disappointing. Remember that in the previous two games, Metal and Night Souls could both charge non-dimming breaker type chips to make them deal double damage. Well, in Battlefield 6, Ground Cross can also charge non-dimming breaker chips to make some rocks fall onto enemy panels. And that's literally it. Unfortunately, the only damage modifier that Ground Cross gives to any breaker chips is a plus 10 damage buff, which really isn't a lot at all. That basically means that Air Hockey only gets to 80 damage per hit when used with Ground Cross, in a game where damage numbers were generally increased across the board. Back in my first episode of Folder Decoder, I mentioned how Boomer went from 60 damage in Battlefield 5 to 100 on the lowest level Boomer in Battlefield 6, up to a damage number of 170 on Mega Boomer. It feels so strange to see some standard chips get the ability to do insane amounts of damage in Battlefield 6, but for Air Hockey to just not get that same treatment. And ultimately, Ground Cross is one of the least popular ones in Battlefield 6, partially due to its lack of a real purpose. Had it given a plus 50 or even just a plus 30 damage buff to breaker chips, I think that Ground Cross still would not have been too strong, but would obviously be much stronger than it is now. Honestly, even giving it a double damage charge like Metal and Night Souls could have been considered for it, especially given that both Aqua and Tomahawk crosses get double damage chip charges of their own, and they're in the same version as Ground Cross. Ultimately though, I can't say that Air Hockey is bad in Battlefield 6, it just could have been better if Ground Cross had been just a bit stronger. Disregarding the use of the cross system though, I'd say that Air Hockey is still a pretty fun chip to use, and one that can still pull off some consistent damage. And of course, for the third game in a row, the LMN codes indicate that the Pit Hockey Program Advance is back for the third and final time, though my opinions on that one haven't really changed in this game. I'm just not a fan of program advances that need 3 different chip codes. And that's it for Air Hockey. Funnily enough, this chip really seemed to get steadily weaker throughout each of its appearances. It went from being possibly the single most powerful chip in Battlefield 4 to being a secondary damage source after the Drill Arm chip in Battlefield 5, and ended up being much weaker than it could have been in the final game of the series. Overall though, I really have nothing bad to say about Air Hockey. It's an incredible chip, and is still always worth considering as an option in your folders, no matter what game you're playing. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and consider subscribing to my channel for some more Mega Man Battle Network content. In addition to these Network Evolution videos, I also make a series where I showcase various chip folders from throughout the Battle Network games, as well as essay-style videos discussing various topics related to the games. And as always, thanks for watching.